My name is Cody Woody. I'm serve as the Director of Government Affairs and Advocacy for the Southern Education Foundation. And I wanted to go in a little bit about what we do and who we are, and if I can, for a quick second. So, the Southern Education Foundation's mission is to advance equitable education policies and practices that elevate learning for low-income students and students of color. So we continue to have that mission, and that be our mission to increase education for all, especially for students of color and for low-income students around the southern regions. As you can see here, this is our vision and some of the work we're focusing on. It says the Southern focus, but we also work nationally. So sometimes we work with most times and oftentimes we work with the U.S. Department of Education, and we also work with Congress on some legislation. So that does put us nationally. We have a focus on K through 20. With the 20 side, we really focus on HBCUs and some of our consortium buckets that we use to do our work in is the advocacy and government affairs, research and policy, and leadership and development. And again, you can see the scope and scales of our work here is a demonstration of what we do here. At the bottom, as you can see, we cover about 17 states, but again, we work with Congress on sometimes pieces of legislation, and we work with the U.S. Department of Education and sometimes the President's office. So you'll be getting a scope of a lot of work if you're willing to join here. So go ahead and kick this back over to Mike Tefesky.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Tefelsky. I'm a senior supervising attorney at the Southern Poverty Law Center on the Children's Rights team. I use pronouns he, him, and I am just delighted to see the level of interest in this fellowship, and thrilled that we have the opportunity to recognize and honor Lynn Huntley and her tremendous advocacy as a civil rights attorney. We need many more education and children's rights focused lawyers in the South, and I am thrilled that so many of you are interested in this opportunity. The Southern Poverty Law Center was founded 50 years ago as a civil rights organization based out of Montgomery, Alabama. We now have offices across the South in Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Washington, D.C., as well as our primary office in Montgomery. We work for racial and economic justice across the South, and we work in partnership with communities to dismantle white supremacy, strengthen intersectional movements, and advance the human rights of all people. Many folks are familiar with the work of our intelligence project, and that tracks hate and extremist groups across the country. Folks may be familiar with Learning for Justice, which formerly was known as Teaching Tolerance, which provides educational curriculum and supports to teachers and families across the country as well. And then we have a legal department at SPLC, which has 6 practice groups, one of them being children's rights, and would be the practice group that this fellow would work largely with through SEF. Our other practice groups are voting rights, immigrant justice, economic justice, criminal justice reform, and LGBTQ rights and special litigation. We also have a policy team that does legislative advocacy, both at the state and federal levels across our states and then in DC. Within our children's rights team, I thought I could just take a minute to talk about what we do. We use an integrated advocacy approach, and by that I mean we try to use all the tools that we have available at the center to achieve the goals that we're working on behalf of for our clients. And so we use litigation strategies, both class action and direct services advocacy on behalf of children. We also do policy work where we are engaging with legislatures at the state level, and then also local policymakers and federal policymakers to influence changes for children across the South as well. And we also have an active community outreach, engagement, and mobilization team within our unit that is critical in delivering the services to our clients. Within our children's rights team, we have 2 primary focus goals. One is to decarcerate and deinstitutionalize youth across the South, And we do that through using this integrated advocacy model. And then we also, which I think is most relevant for our presentation today, is we work to ensure access and equity to education and other public resources for children across the South. And so we use, again, a variety of strategies to get at that. And I know we'll talk more about the specific work that the fellow will be doing, but that gives you a bit of an overview of what SPLC does, and then also sort of what the Children's Rights Team does. And I'll be happy to answer more questions as we move along. Thanks, Cody. Oh, Cody, I think you're still on mute there, sorry.
So thank you, Mike, for that. And moving right along, you know, a lot of, some people didn't know who Lynn Walker Huntley was beforehand. And I would say for myself, I really didn't know until I started reading a lot more about her. And for those that don't know about this trailblazing fighter, and I say, you know, we got some information that says a trailblazing fighter. We say the trailblazing fighter. And I just wanted to give you a little background about who she was. And she was, you know, she was a giant for social justice and civil rights throughout her life. You know, and her mission was to improve quality of life for all of us, not just African Americans, but for whites, for Hispanics, for all of us. Because education is just, it's a tool for all of us to use so we can advance our own careers. So throughout her career, she held numerous positions. You know, she was the first female president of the Southern Education Foundation. She was a lawyer at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund in New York. She also served as Chief Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the U.S. Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division. And she also served as the program officer for the Ford Foundation. So I just wanted to give you a little bit about who she was, and you know how impressive and how impressive she was. I remember hearing this video, and said, no matter if you came in contact with her, just know that she was going to be your mentor. So that's what kind of person Lynn Walker Huntley was. So to get into the good stuff, right? What are some of the benefits? I know that's what I would be wondering. What would be some of the benefits of the fellowship? So some of the benefits that you'll get is the skill building, right? Exposure to a plethora of educational equity issues when it comes to like school funding, to arrange to critical race theory. I know a lot of people have been hearing about critical race theory. You know, you're going to be able to touch on some of those things. You know, you get experience in the litigation process at the appellant level. You know, you get to identify educational issues to advance through litigation. You get to review and provide feedback on amicus briefs. There's one that we're looking at right now over in Kentucky in regards to the legality of public dollars being used for private schools. You get to be involved in that. And again, it's just like our range is so, it's not just within the 5 states that you will be that you are primarily focused on. It just depends on the nature of the work and who's requesting what, but you'll be used throughout. And, you know, you get the legislative process. I know that was one thing that was very exciting to me, because as the government affairs director, learning that these state legislatures and these assemblies are ran differently, and they have different players. And being able to understand that part also gives you some great experience in learning how to legislate, or how to maneuver through some of the information that that you have to provide. Also, the best thing about it, you see Mike and I here, right? You get some of the mentoring, professional development from the SEF staff, Southern Education staff, and the Southern Poverty Law Center staff. So you get that professional development as well throughout your tenure here. All right, so let's go into some of the program logistics. So, you know, this program is for 3 Ls. So the third year law students who want to gain skills and experience in advanced education equity in the South for low income and students of color throughout the avenues of research, policy analysis, and through litigation. You also get the experience of implementing strategies to advance educational equity policies at the state, the local, and the national level. Like I told you before, you're going to be working on a national level, being able to be exposed to the U.S. Department of Education on some issues, and sometimes you get to work with the school boards and with state legislature. I mean, with the state legislatures all around the South. You'll be able to identify issues to address legislation or litigation at the local, state, and national level. Another amazing thing about this is that you will be able to hold advocacy trainings for SEF staff and other stakeholders. So, you can teach us some of the information on how to advocate, right, correctly. So you have that opportunity. I think I've probably beaten a dead horse with this one, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. Your primary, the 3L will primarily focus on 5 states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and Mississippi. But I mean, just depends on the nature of the work. You might be included within you might be having to work in 12 other states in the South. So just wanted to make sure that was clear, that it's just not limited to the 17 states that we do cover. So let's get into where you will be housed. So the fellow will work for 2 years, starting September 2022 to August 2024 at the Southern Education Foundation's office, located in downtown Atlanta, beautiful downtown Atlanta, honestly. And the fellow will receive a stipend of $125,000 each year for a total of $250,000. So it's a very lucrative job. So and it's some very rewarding work. So if you're ready to jump on and join the educational fight, we would definitely love to have you. So as we continue to go forward in this presentation, let's talk about the eligibility and other requirements that we think that are imperative for people to know. So you must be a third-year law student. You need to have at least a 3.2 GPA or higher, and you must be willing to relocate to Atlanta, Georgia for the 2-year duration of the fellowship. So if those are things that if you are able to do this, please, we encourage you to apply for this. So as we go into important dates to remember, so the application process deadline, as you can see, is going to be October 15th. The selection announcement would be held on November 19th, which will be a week before Thanksgiving. And the fellowship, like we talked about before, the fellowship begins in September 2022, and the fellowship ends August 2024. So this brings us to our questions portion of it. And I have our comms director, Gretchen, right here, that's going to be reading us some of the questions, and hopefully we can help answer those questions. And for any questions that are not able to be answered, we're going to have this email address so you can send your questions there, and I'll make sure to get back to you at a timely manner. All right, Gretchen.
All right, currently there aren't any questions in the queue, but if anyone does have questions, please enter them in the chat box. I'm sure you're all way too familiar with Zoom now, but the chat box appears at the bottom center of the screen. It's a little voice bubble, and if you want to type questions in there, we'll be happy to take them.
Okay. I have a question for Mike, just to kind of kick it off and everything like that. Why would this fellow be a viable asset to our organization?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, but I can just expand on, there's a lack of lawyers in the South in particular who are focused on children's rights and who are focused on education access and equity. But there is probably the greatest need in the South for more advocates and for more lawyers who are committed to doing this work. And I know that when I went to law school, I was the son of 2 civil rights advocates and went to law school with an intention of working for racial and economic justice, but not necessarily knowing what that would look like in practice. And I should have given a little more background on me. I've been with SPLC for about 3 years. And before that, I spent the first 11 years of my career at Georgia Legal Services Program, working in rural counties across Georgia on behalf of low-income families, providing free civil legal services. And so in doing that work, I saw the great need for more advocacy around education issues and how that could make a systemic impact on communities and really work towards the goals that I had as in my professional goals of wanting to create systemic change and move for racial and economic justice. And so in seeing that, I really committed a lot of my practice over time to working on children's rights issues, education issues. And I think that this fellow provides a great opportunity to build, continue to grow our bench and our team of education advocates in the South and give you real experiential learning and mentoring so that you can continue to grow in that work. And I think it will be, a great way to see how different strategies are used by different organizations as well to achieve that goal. And so happy to answer more questions. Maybe they're starting to fill up, so I'll be quiet.
We've got a bunch of questions. One has come through saying, asking about the grade point average. If you don't have a 3.2 or higher, would you be disqualified?
So we would recommend a 3.2 GPA to start, honestly. So we're looking for a person or a 3L that has a 3.2 GPA.
And then there's another question. How do you recommend that an applicant stand out in the application process? Are there any experiences or skills they should focus on when applying?
You want to take that, Mike, or you want me to take a little bit of that?
If you want to kick off, I can add to it. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, a high GPA would be one. Honestly, for me personally, for what I will be looking at is the legislative experience, because sometimes you have some law students. I know a couple law students that actually intern at their local school district, or they interned for a state representative and gained that information, or for a congressional member while they were in law school, got that legal experience. Or was a fellow in Congress and then decided to go to law school. So that's one thing that I would be looking for, along with the GPA, along with hopefully not to say it's required, but if you were published, right? If you had some information in there, if you were published, that's something that I'll be looking for as well.
My feedback on this would be, and I say this to all law students who I work with and have mentored or over the years, and it's just to talk about your connection to the work, what brings you to the work, and personalize it, and think about, your own educational experiences, good or bad, and how you saw the value and impact of your own personal education or those in your community. And why you see a need for more advocacy in the space. I think that's always important to tell that story, because I think we all come to this work for different reasons, and we have all of our own personal experiences, and I think sharing those really helps to demonstrate to a committee about why you really want to do this work and why you're committed to it. And I think there's a lot of different pieces to this work substantively that we'll be working on. So, for example, we have, as Cody alluded to, a national campaign called Public Funds, Public Schools, and you can visit the website. It's at pfps.org. And that's a collaboration between the Education Law Center and Southern Poverty Law Center, and also Southern Education Foundation is a part of the work that we're doing there. And that's to ensure that we are not privatizing public schools and that we are keeping public funds within public schools to ensure that all students have access to a high quality and well-funded education. And so that's a campaign that has really taken off in the short 3 years that it's been working. We have a legislative tracker on the website that tracks voucher legislation across the country, and we see an increase in school vouchers as privatizers are trying to take advantage of COVID and further diluting resources away from public schools. We have been engaged in litigation. We were successful in challenging a Tennessee and working to challenge a Tennessee voucher bill that was passed. Last summer, we sued Betsy DeVos and the Department of Education, and were successful in preserving more than $1 billion in CARES Act funds that were going to be diverted to private schools away from public schools. So that's one substantive area. We're also working to end the school to prison pipeline, looking at discipline and how we create restorative and trauma-informed practices in schools that disrupts the punitive practices that exclude kids from schools and ends race disparities in those policies. So there's a lot of different substantive issues that come up in this work, and I think give opportunities for you to talk about, you know, maybe your interest or experience. So.
And if I can add on real quick, Gretchen, just maybe it can answer another question too. Some of the work that we're working on at SEF is, you know, some of the, you know, a lot of the crime that's going on around the city of Atlanta, and being involved in that and making sure that we're providing recommendations to an advisory council here in Atlanta when it pertains to the educational lens, when it pertains to the youth, and making sure that school districts making sure that the mayor's office is working with school districts on programs, so that there's no redundancy on programs. So it's not just educational, just really strictly educational based. It's a plethora of things, and I think it'll be helpful if you show your range, right? So just wanted to add that.
Hi, this is Kavita Williams. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Southern Education Foundation. I'm listening in between other meetings, but just want to echo and underscore both what Mike and Cody have said about just showing and demonstrating a commitment to social justice and equity and education as the public good that it is. But I also want to underscore just the process of the application. You know, SEF does a number of fellowships, and they're always highly competitive. Like many of you, the pool is talented. So we are thinking we will draw a top-notch pool. So I just want to underscore the importance of really paying attention and submitting a very clean and thorough application, paying attention to the writing. Those prompts are important, so really be thoughtful about those. Also, letters of recommendation, please make sure you get people that can actually speak to your experience and the value add that you would bring to this, and instead of, you know, kind of just general, even form letters that we often get sometimes from different things. So really also making sure you're putting forth the best application that you can will go a long way in the process.
We've got a few different questions about the issue of the bar. People are asking whether they need to take the Georgia bar, or if there's any other state that would be important to take the bar in, whether having passed the bar in a particular state would make them a more attractive candidate, or if passing the bar prior to starting work is necessary. So, gentlemen.
I defer to Cody on some of those, you know, kind of qualifications, since y'all are the hosts.
So from that perspective, the bar, since we're going to be working, so my understanding, I'm not an attorney, and you know, hopefully the person that's an attorney that can answer that question more thoroughly on that side. But I would think that you're going to be working in a plethora of states. So it wouldn't just necessarily be, you know, just in Georgia. It would be in a plethora of states. It'll be in the other 5, but more along the lines of the South. So I think from my understanding, you should be able to take it anywhere. I would hope that you would want to take it in Georgia. We know that we're going to be selecting someone for the process beforehand, before they take the bar, just in hopes that they will be passing. As if they get selected, they will be passing. So hopefully that answered some of the question from that perspective. Mike, do you have anything to say from the lawyer side?
Well, we may want to follow up with folks just to let them know, and sorry, I get a notice my internet is unstable if I'm shaky my voice, but we may want to let folks know if there is an expectation for the Georgia bar. The Georgia bar for graduating 3Ls, assuming you graduate in May of next year, would be in July. I think there is the deadline for the bar application in Georgia would be December 1st. But then you can still, which would be after the notification of the decision on the fellowship. But then there is still a late period until March, I believe, when you can still apply, but with just like a small additional fee, a late fee. But so I think that sitting for the July bar, I would assume is kind of the expectation wherever you are. But certainly if folks are graduating in December maybe and sitting for the bar in February somewhere, that would be something to maybe alert in your application and for the committee to consider if you've already signed up and are planning to take a February 2022 bar exam.
And I'll just add, this is Kenita again. We do have FAQs document, and we are noting your questions. We will update and clarify this, and definitely send updated FAQs to all the attendees. So if your question is not answered here today, we will be sure we do that in the updated FAQs.
And this is really a clarification, but the question is there only one fellow position? So if you want to sort of walk through the story with that and the length of the fellowship.
So it is only one fellow. Again, the length for that one would be from September 2022, to be next year, to August 2024. So it'll be one person being selected.
And I think the only other question I see, what kind of relevant experience are you looking for applicants to have? So prior to starting, what kind of experience should people have?
I would say underlining educational experience. I would like that I would be looking for from my eye. Again, it's going to be a committee of people that's looking on there from all different type of eyes. From my side, it would be at least some educational experience or some, and again, like I was saying, education has a wide range of issues that's inside of it, right? So it may be from that side, maybe from some juvenile justice, right? That has some pieces of education in there. But that experience that we will be looking for, another eye that would be impressive to me, but maybe you intern with a congressional member, or you intern with a school district, or you intern with an elected official. That's something that I'll also be looking at as well to be placed in there. And the writing skills, I think our Chief Operation Officer, Kenita Williams, was very detailed in that. We want to make sure that writing is very strong. Any person that we hire here is required to be a strong, extremely strong writer. And Mike, if you want to kind of chime in and see what you would be looking for, again, with the whole committee that we're putting together.
Yeah, I think you did a good job covering that piece of it, and I know that I think just bringing your experience to the application and commitment and high quality work and as Kenita mentioned, I think demonstrating that will be really impactful for the committee.
And this may be a good question for Mike. Somebody asked, if you're not selected as a fellow, are there other career pathways to get into sort of civil rights and education law?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak with anyone one-on-one. I can put my email in the chat and you can reach out to me. I'd be happy to speak with you about my trajectory, my career path, kind of how I got here, other opportunities that may be available. Certainly there are other like well-known fellowships that 3Ls are considering right now with Stadden and Equal Justice Works, and there's a big public interest community that I know is preparing applications there. We, in the past at SPLC, have had a fellowship our own internal fellowship program that is currently on a pause, but we are hopeful that it will be reinstated at some point. And certainly, you know, folks can check our website too at splcenter.org for other opportunities. Historically, for staff attorney positions, there has been sort of a 2-year experience built in, but and that was because we had a fellowship program, but I think we're moving to get away from that so that we have, you know, hopefully more diversity in our candidate pool, and also bringing in more newer lawyers who we can mentor and help develop as we continue to grow our legal team at SPLC as well. So happy to chat with anybody, always willing to, you know, jump on a Zoom or discuss opportunities and give more resources as well.
Another question is, given that your work spans a broad portfolio of issues, are there any particular issues or fights you expect the bulk of the fellows' time to be focused on during the next 2 years? Or are there certain ongoing projects now where you anticipate a need for additional bandwidth provided by the fellow?
I would say off the top of my mind, and I will give you a personal experience. The reason why I jumped back into education, I got out of education for about 8 months or 9 months, and I got back into education because of the voucher fight, the further segregation of schools. So I would say, as you continue to see throughout the country and throughout the South, that certain leadership in government, they're using this COVID mask mandate to further allow students to go into a private school or take public funds and go into a private school. So I would say you will see a lot of that work coming up with a plethora of a lot of other work too. Again, like I told you before, in Atlanta, in the city of Atlanta, we're also working with the city of Atlanta, the school boards here to work on some crime issues. But for a regional, right, approach, and now it's a national, you see a lot of work in the vouchers. So if you've been watching the news, you'll see a lot of that one. Mike, did you want to jump on?
Yeah, I would just echo, you know, our PFPS campaign has really exploded over the last couple of years. And, you know, this past year has been you know, I think the most number of voucher bills introduced and passed across the country, and that number is just continuing to rise, and we're seeing that dilution of public dollars away from public schools, and then which go to private schools, which then do not have the same civil rights protections for students that can discriminate, you know, and we see that and how harmful and segregative those vouchers are on communities and states. So that is definitely, you know, our phones are ringing off the hook to grow that more. And I think the fellow would, from our perspective of what the fellow would do with SPLC, that would be definitely a piece of it. The school to prison pipeline work is something we're working on across all of our states, particular discipline and policing in schools. Those are two primary issues. And then I think the two that I didn't mention are access to public education for various types of impacted students, you know, and how COVID is impacting that way. So whether it be students with disabilities or immigrant students or students experiencing poverty, you know, how are we ensuring that we know the inequities are just widening because of the pandemic, and how do we work to ensure that all of our children are getting access to high quality education while we go through this period of time. And also just reimagining education on the other side. Like, what does it look like differently maybe when we re-emerge in the classroom? And then the last, I think the fourth bucket will be, you know, we can expect the anti-CRT rhetoric to just continue. And we know that that boogeyman is going to be in all of our state legislatures next year, and we are going to need to fight back against it. And we're going to need to be ready to deliver the resources to do that. So I think that's another area, whether that be in the legislatures or through litigation or other community mobilization, that's certainly another area that we're gearing up for. So.
And this is Kenita again. I was going to jump in just briefly, but I think actually Mike touched on much of what I was going to say. But to the original question, there are some core issues that SEF kind of aligns with and focuses on to help us really ensure that schools are working for Black and Brown kids in the South and that we're ensuring deeper learning outcomes. And those are really largely represented in our public policy priorities that are on our website. General big issues, school reform, school governance, school finance, school climate, those type of issues. But also what Mike just said about CRT conversation is that we need someone in this role that is just nimble because we don't know what's gonna emerge in the social political landscape. And that while we have some core issues that are tied to our mission, also there might be things that pop up that we need to just be responsive to as they emerge in the landscape. So that's all I'll add.
Okay, and then there was a question about travel. There's an expectation that the fellow will need to travel during the course of the fellowship, and any sense of sort of how much travel there might be.
That's actually a really good question. And I'm going to take that one down. I would say right now for myself personally, I haven't done too much of any traveling just because of the Delta variant that's going on. And we want to make sure that we're following the CDC guidelines. I'm taking down that question and I'll make sure I put that on our list to answer. So that is really a good question.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we can give a percentage, but I would say the person should be, provided the world goes back to some semblance of normalcy with after post-pandemic, the person in the role should be willing and poised to be able to travel and do work across our region. We don't know how much, but travel is likely going to be in the role just because we work across the 17-state footprint.
Okay, and that looks like all of the questions that are in here. Unless anyone has anything else that they are very busily typing.
I'll just say something while somebody's probably in there typing or something like that. I just think it's very imperative that someone joins our fight. It will be really good to have an attorney here to work with, to actually look at some of the language that we're looking at and seeing how we can attach some of these issues. If this is and figure out if this is a regional approach, if we take a regional approach, this is a state by state approach. And then just to help with all the issues that are coming out, CRT, what's coming out with the voucher, the aggressive nature of some of these the leadership, right, and what they're trying to do when it comes to vouchers and further segregating our schools. So if selected, definitely looking forward to working with you. And it's just imperative to just join this fight.
I think on that note, Cody, you can go ahead and close us out.
Yep. So again, thank y'all for participating in our webinar. Again, we're going to make sure that we get you all the questions answered. Here's some information, that if you're looking to get some quick, follow the fellow description and the application form and the fellowship application form and the email address for any questions that didn't get answered. Again, we're going to be updating that information, and feel free to contact us at any time. And I'm definitely always available. I'm always willing to talk. So thank you all so much for joining us. Mike, thank you for being here. Gretchen, thank you for being here. Kenita, thank you for being here and chiming in. And I'm sure that Raymond senses regrets, but he's definitely excited about bringing somebody in. So y'all have a great day.